Game over, man. Game over.
You're gonna need a bigger potion. So serious.
I am Iron Man. This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the InSession Film Podcast.
Oh, welcome to episode 653 for September 8th, 2025, and I'm JD Duran.
And I'm Brendan Cassidy.
Hey, thanks for joining us, everybody. It is finally here, our 1999 retrospective. It is upon us.
You know what they say, JD? Another year, another year.
Another year, another year. 1999, it's kind of wild that we are through the 2000s. If you're new or new-ish to the show, this is something we do every single year. We've been counting backwards since we did this over a decade ago.
Yeah.
When we first launched the show. I think it was back in 2015. We did a best of the decade so far for the 2010s, which means we caught all the way up through where we were in real time in 2015, but we also went backwards to 2010. So we decided, you know what? Let's keep going. So then we did 2009, and then the following year, 2008, and so forth. And then last year, we got to the year 2000, which means we completed a whole decade. So we did not just a retrospective for 2000, but we did our best of the decade for the 2000s. We did a whole show on that as well last year.
Yeah, and coincidentally, it landed on episode 600, didn't it?
Yes, it did. That is correct. So it was quite the extravaganza, episode 600.
Yeah, worked out nicely.
So that means this year we have moved into the 90s. And not just the 90s, specifically, obviously, because we're going in order here, 1999, which most people, or maybe not most, but a lot of people certainly consider this to be the best year for cinema, or at least very much among the best years of cinema. So no small feat here talking about the year.
We have thoughts. A lot of great thoughts we talked about already on episode 652 just last week. We had a great guest, Julia Sermons from the 1999 The Podcast, where they dedicate an entire podcast about the year 1999, which just goes to show the legacy of this particular year. And she shared some great thoughts from her perspective on this year. May or may not have alluded to some things we're about to talk about here as far as our relationship to 1999. But we do have some thoughts about this particular year. At least I do.
Yes. And we'll get to that here in a moment. Before we do, though, I do want to say a big thanks to all of our patrons. You guys make the world go round. We really do appreciate you. If you want to become a patron or an InSession Film VIP, because it's more than just Patreon, patreon.com/InSessionFilm. That is certainly a big way to support us. And I do want to shout out good friend of the show, Alan French, who rejoined us on Patreon. So thank you, Alan, for signing back up once again. We really do appreciate you.
Great to have you back, buddy.
Patreon.com/InSessionFilm. That is the biggest way to support us. But you can also sign up via Apple Podcast subscriptions or YouTube membership. If you like to watch us here on YouTube, you can join the channel, and there you'll get access to all of our VIP episodes as well. So we try to have at least 2 VIP episodes a month. And of course, over on Patreon, there are more rewards available depending on the tier that you sign up for. So I do want to say a big thanks to all of our patrons before we get going here as well. Also, reviews this week. Our review of Magnolia, which kicked off our 1999 retrospective, that is available right now. You can go and check that out. We did a full review of Magnolia. It was about an hour and 20 minutes long. I
was going to say, it wasn't even half the length of the movie.
It was quite lengthy, but really great conversation. So go and check that out. And later on this week, because Brendan and I, we have been full on preparing for this retrospective. So we did not see Conjuring The Last Rites, which hit theaters over the weekend, but we will have a podcast review for it. The great Megan Kearns and Lane Mills, two writers that you can see at InSessionFilm.com, they are going to be holding down the fort for that film. So you can be on the lookout for that podcast review later on this week. And of course, Women in Session at the end of the week as well.
Mm-hmm.
Last thing before we get going, little housekeeping here. So there's a new film coming out called Hamnet, directed by the great Chloe Zhao.
JD will take every opportunity he can to talk about movies that might or might not wreck him.
Oh, I am not going to survive. This might be the last year of me here at InSession Film because I don't know. I might walk out of that theater or walk out. I'll be carried out in a body bag. I just don't know if I'm going to survive that movie based off of what
JD just wants his
saying.
tombstone to say death by movies.
That film is going to absolutely kill me. Everybody to a T. And this, I don't know if I've ever felt more envy, maybe that is the right word, of those at TIFF getting to see this movie, or any film festival for that matter, that's getting to see this movie. Yeah. Because they're all saying the same thing. Two of the greatest performances of the decade, the best movie of the year, and I can't stop crying. So I'm going to die. I'm going to die. That is certainly the gist of it. Now, the reason I bring that up is because the last time a film covering similar subject material came out in 2018, it was my favorite film of that year. That was Damien Chazelle's First Man.
Great movie. One of his best.
A great movie. And that film, for similar reasons, absolutely killed me. And I got a chance to see that again this last week in preparation for a guest appearance I had on another podcast, the Lone Screenplay Nominee podcast. It was one of their side Patreon episodes with Matthew Anderson. It was a really, really great conversation.
Nice.
So I mostly watched it in preparation for that show and that conversation, which I think is coming out this week as well sometime.
Cool.
But
can't wait to hear it.
Also watched it perhaps in preparation for Hamnet. And look, I couldn't make it through First Man. First Man is quietly approaching that Grave of the Fireflies territory where I don't know if I can ever watch this again.
You might want to try watching it again, maybe like the few hours you have before going to see Hamnet, just to see if you can drain everything out of your system, so that way you're not embarrassing yourself and making too much noise in the theater. Maybe you have to empty the tank in order to experience a movie like Hamnet in public.
If Focus Features is listening, please set me up with a private screening, because Brennan is right. I will be distracting to everyone else around me, and I don't want to be. I don't want to be. So just hook me up with a private screening so that way I can watch it in peace and then die in peace. At any rate, be on the lookout for that guest appearance talking about First Man. We had a really great time. Okay. With that said, let's talk about 1999. Before we get to our top 10, we want to talk about the year on the whole. Brendan, what do you think about movies in 1999? Is it the best year for cinema of all time?
Okay. I feel like you basically asked me two completely different questions right there. Or at least I can answer that question in two completely different ways, because I feel like it comes down to two perspectives. Is this one of the greatest movie years of all time? Or is the question better phrased as, is the legacy warranted? Does it make sense? Going into this retrospective, maybe about 8-9 months ago or something like that, which, full transparency, at that time still had a lot more homework to do. We were still very early in the preparation process here. I was kind of ready to say that no, I don't think 1999 is quite up to par with some of these other years that we've talked about during these past retrospectives. And now that we've done all of the homework that we could do leading up to this, and full transparency, there are still a few blind spots that I have, and I can talk about those before we get into our respective top 10s, but I feel like I've seen the heavy hitters that we need to see and the ones that we need to talk about. So I feel like I've done enough of my homework to not just be dangerous. I feel very comfortable in where I sit with 1999. But do I think this is one of the greatest movie years of all time? I'll just say this. I can see why people say that. I can see it. I don't know if I would agree with that. I think 2007 kind of runs circles around this year, personally. And I also think I'm even more passionate about other years we've talked about, such as 2001 or 2002, maybe even 2004. But I think I realized why that is. And I talked about this a lot during our conversation with Julia Sermons. I talked about this during our review of Magnolia. I was 8 going on 9 years old in the year 1999. So naturally, I didn't have the formative connection to the movies of this year in real time as maybe a lot of our other critic counterparts did. And I think that might play a huge part as to why I really do like this year. I think the breadth of great films from 1999, probably one of the widest of the years that we've talked about during these retrospectives. I think I can at least acknowledge that. And there are enough heavy hitters in my top 10 where I can say this is a very good year for movies. I do think it's among one of the better ones. But I sometimes feel like I have to push back a little bit given the status of this year as being maybe the greatest movie year of all time. And I personally have had a more passionate response for some other years that we've talked about during these retrospectives. Now, the other side of that question that I alluded to is the legacy of this year warranted? Now that I think it is, primarily because I think the kinds of movies that were coming out in 1999 sort of represented not just the turn of the century, but also sort of alluded to and foreshadowed where certain movies were going to go and what types of movies were going to stem from that. Movies like Fight Club and The Matrix and the Blair Witch Project, The Sixth Sense, American Beauty to certain degrees for better and for worse. A lot of these movies were kind of trendsetters in a way. So I think the influence of this year makes it one of the more impactful, one of the most important as it relates to the trajectory of film history. I think that is something I will absolutely acknowledge and even agree with for many people that do say it's one of the greatest years for film, because I think it means so much for where film was ultimately going. A lot of those turning points happened in 1999. I just think I had a slightly more passionate response for some of these other years that we've talked about in previous retrospectives.
Yeah.
But that might just be because I was too young to experience this one in real time. Like that could just be a me thing. And I think that's fair, honestly.
Yeah.
It's maybe not a knock on the actual year itself then.
Yeah. It's really interesting that you say that. And obviously we share the same brain. So some of what I'm about to say is probably to be expected. But I will say this, while I'm with you in the sense that I did not grow up with many of these films, as I noted in our Magnolia review, and I think I mentioned this last week on the show in our conversation with Julia, I was 14 years old in 1999.
Yeah.
So I'm on the verge of being a high schooler, obviously a teenager, and trying to form my own identity. However, at that time in 1999, that was mostly revolved around athletics. My sense of identity as it relates to film and art, that didn't come until much later when I was in college. It started in high school for sure, and I've talked about that before here on the show, but it really blossomed in the mid 2000s when I'm in college. So what you're saying as it relates to 1999, I very much am in alignment with you. Okay. But also that same idea, that theory applies to most of the years we covered in the 2000s as well. Because I did not grow up with many of those films, and I did not watch them in a real-time sense. All the way up till probably 2008, that's when I was watching, at least as it relates to new films. Because in the 2000s, or excuse me, when I'm in the mid-2000s, when I'm at college, and I'm starting to form my identity with film and art, a lot of it was with older films, with classic movies that we had access to at our school library that I could get access to. And that's where my cinephiledom started to form. It probably was 2008-9 when I started to pay attention to the current year of film and watching a lot of new movies as the year went along in a real-time sense. Gotcha. So a lot of how we operate now is fairly in alignment with the trajectory of InSession Film. So that starts in 2008 or 9. It was 2013. It was just 5 years later when we launched InSession Film. So a lot of my cinephile life, and especially now that I'm talking about it out loud, it is very much tethered to the college experience for me. Yeah. So a lot of the 2000s, especially when we've done these retrospectives, it's no different than what it is for 99 for me. And that is important context, because what I'm about to say, it's not because I was so young in 1999 as much as a lot of it is the same as everything that we've done before as far as these retrospectives, especially
and I'm glad,
the 2000s.
And I'm glad you bring that up. Sorry to cut you off, because I know you're arriving to your grander point in just a few moments, but maybe that does allow us to look at this year a bit differently then and give two different perspectives, because maybe you could be a bit more objective in that regard, since you started to find your love of film a little bit later than maybe even I did. I always love movies, even in, let's say, the early 2000s. I may have learned to love it in a different way and learned to love and appreciate the art of film criticism itself. But, many of those movies we talked about, let's say during our 2004 retrospective, a lot of them were childhood favorites of mine simultaneously. So for you and I to come at this maybe from different angles, allows us to bring some validity to what we're both about to say here.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I did not treat 1999. This experience was no different from 2000, 2001, 2002, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It was the same.
Yeah. You didn't go into it thinking of it as this holy grail of a cinematic year necessarily, given the legacy of it, right? Or did you? Or
well,
you at least,
that was certainly top of mind, but I guess what I'm saying is I didn't look at it through the prism that you're articulating.
Got it.
In the sense that I didn't grow up with these movies, so this was a bit of a learning curve, or however you want to phrase it.
Understood.
Because what you're talking about, and I very much understand, I love that perspective, but that also applies for 2000, 2001, 2002, 3, 4, 5, 6 for me as well. Because I didn't watch any of those movies in real time at all.
Yeah, gotcha.
So 1999, as far as this exercise is concerned, is very much the same as what we've
kind of
done
routine
the last
for you
10 years.
In a way.
Very much routine. Now, because 1999 does have this pedestal, that was top of mind for sure. It was very much top of mind. And I think as a result, at the beginning of this, I'm with you in the sense that on an initial thought, I don't know if this is going to live up to the hype. It certainly didn't seem like that was going to be the case. Is this really going to be the best year for cinema? Because on paper, and I had about 50 films, some I'd seen, a lot that I haven't, I was kind of mixed on how I would feel about the year on the whole. I certainly didn't think that it would live up to the hype. I didn't. However, I will say this. On this side of doing the exercise and watching dozens of these movies going back to February when I first started watching these 1999 movies, where I sit now, is it the best year for cinema of all time? I don't know. I don't think so. But it is way more in that conversation than where I was 6 months ago.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I do think this is at least at the very top. I think it's really great. Now, to the conversation we had last year, or maybe it was our best of the decade show, I'm trying to remember, because we had conversations about, okay, what was the best year of the 2000s? Yeah. And there were some years, I believe you brought up the argument that 2001 is one of the best years for those at the top. It's very top heavy, but you were a little mixed, or you had questions about the depth of 2001.
Yeah, and I think that was just one of those things where the heavy hitters from 2001, it's just one of those years for me where pretty much everything in my top 10 is an all-time favorite of mine. So that maybe makes it seem more top heavy than I'm willing to give it credit for.
And I bring that up to say this. I think you can make the same argument for 1999.
Okay.
The films at the top, where we are talking about excellence.
Yeah.
I don't know if the depth is there, however, and that's where I do have questions about where this might rank comparatively to a lot of other years. And obviously we're mostly comparing this to contemporary years because we've been doing the retrospective coming from the mid 2015, from 2015 all the way down to 2000 to 1999.
Yeah.
But obviously you have elite years in the 70s. You got 1939 as well as people talk about. You have a few years in the 40s that people consider to be the best of all time. So there's a lot in prior decades that we haven't brought up much in this conversation. And I do wonder if the depth is where things could change for me. I will say this, though. I am with you that I don't think it's as good as 2001.
Yeah.
2001 will forever and always be the most underrated year for cinema. People don't talk about it enough.
Yeah.
It is excellent. And not just those at the top. I think the depth is also phenomenal. It is really, 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 really good. It is absolutely incredible. 2004, also good. 2007, I'm with you on 2007. 2001 and 2007 might be in the top 5 of all time, let alone of the 21st century.
And while I did say last year that maybe 2001 could seem a little top heavy, even if it is, those at the top and how much of a heavy hit that they left for me personally, that alone made me appreciate that year a little bit more than 1999, simply because I'm just so passionate about those movies that are at the top. And sometimes that passion is the loudest thing about it. And like it became 2001's very much a me year. And it sounds like it very much was a you year as well. Like the movies that came out that year really kind of defined who you and I were as film lovers. I feel like maybe even more so than 1999.
Absolutely. And while it's too early to tell right now, but in the last 5 to 10 years, I do think there are a few years in there that might qualify in decades to come. Maybe 2019. I think that's quite a deep year as well. And going back to, I think this was a part of the conversation we had, or maybe it was Patreon bonus content that we did last year for Best of the Decade. I'm trying to recall here off the cuff because we were talking about, I think it was actually the episode before, because we were talking about best films of this decade so far. That's what I'm thinking of here. And during that conversation, you and I differed a little bit, but for me, it was last year. It was 2024 when we're talking about Nickel Boys and The Brutalist and Furiosa. I saw the TV Glow.
Yeah.
Dune Part 2, A Different Man, Sing Sing, all those great movies that came out last year. I do wonder if 2024, and it's too early to tell. I'm just posing this as a question, but time, I could see that as a year that we talk about as like how you and I are talking about 2007 and 2001 right now. I wonder if in another 20 years we're talking about 2024 in that same way.
Well, I could see that. I could see that for 2024 because many of the movies that came out in 2024, and you were certainly higher on the year overall than I was, but I'm at least willing to acknowledge that 2024 gave us a lot of films that tried new things, experimented with the form that maybe we could be seeing some trendsetters in like 10 or 20 years or something like that, which is why I still want to give some credit to 1999 as being kind of predictive in where film was going as an artistic craft and as a language, because this year did present movies that kind of, I don't want to say invented new things, but kind of invented new things, at least new things that directors could do with the form for sure. New types of movies, new ways that certain genres can be portrayed and presented. Like there was a certain tone to movies in 1999 that we certainly got beforehand, but 1999 kind of perfected a lot of them, or at least were the great starting point as to where they would ultimately go. So like I could see maybe a year like 2024 having a similar kind of resurgence because a lot of films from last year did play with the form in a way that could maybe see some positive effects in some time. And I think 1999 is an example of one that did do that.
The experimentation that we saw last year, the way many of those films tapped into the zeitgeist is just remarkable to me. And the depth, I think, is out of this world. I had a top 20, obviously. I have probably another 20 films, and any of my 21 through 40, honestly, I could put in that 1920 spot and not lose sleep, like at all. Wouldn't even think twice about it. I think it is the deepest year in the InSession film era for me, and absolutely remarkable. So I say all that to say this: I do prefer 2001, I do prefer 2007. And I do prefer 2024 over 1999. Now, that said, I do think 1999 is an excellent year that does give credence to its reputation and its legacy as one of the best years for cinema ever, especially when you couple it with how influential many of these films became afterwards. And that is a big part of this conversation as well, right? Because it's not just the films themselves, which are excellent, but my God, so many of these movies went on to influence dozens and dozens and dozens of movies over the next decade. And some of it we're still feeling today. And that can't be dismissed. Even something like The Phantom Menace, and spoiler alert, The Phantom Menace isn't on my list.
Not mine either, but I kind of appreciate that movie a little bit more now.
But what that film did for the modern blockbuster, we are feeling the effects of that today.
That's true. Very true.
So even a movie like that, which we won't talk about much tonight, but was a huge part of 1999, obviously, still a big part of the legacy of 1999 and the power that it holds, for sure.
There's that, There, and sorry to cut you off, but there's also a certain type of movie that 1999 gave us a lot of that we just don't see all that much of anymore. And I guess I can't really think of any other term for them other than fearless comedies. Like many of the comedies from 1999, whether it be a romantic comedy or some other type of comedy in general, really dared to be as politically incorrect as possible. And I that doesn't happen that much anymore. So in a way, it kind of also makes 1999 kind of a time capsule of a year, which might add to its legacy status. And I can see that. I absolutely can see that being a fair argument as to the importance of this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And while, we've talked about how American Beauty, at least for you and I, and for many others, that might not have aged well. Last week, Julia brought up the comedy Dick, and I did follow up on my promise. I did revisit that film this last week. That film holds up gloriously today. It is incredible how almost prescient it was, despite it also talking about an event that took place 20 years previously. It's
great. It's really
stunning.
Great.
Yeah. So that one, so like you get those kind of comedies as well. So yeah, and we talked about it a little bit last week as well. Julia made some great points about how the economics of 1999, the structure, the Hollywood system, it functioned in such a way that it gave us so much more than what we could get now. And I very much do appreciate that era. And we've talked about that, maybe not explicitly, but even in the early 2000s when we did those retrospectives, we talked about that a lot with many of those movies and how we just don't get many of them today for sure. But 1999, that very much applies as well. So again, we haven't done much homework on what's the best year of the 70s, what's the best year of the 80s or of the 40s or of the 50s. Maybe we'll get to that at a later date. I don't have all that research in front of me to say, yes, 1999 is one of the top 5 years ever.
I'm not even ready to say if it's one of the best years of the 90s because there's still more homework to do for the 90s. Yet. Yeah.
I don't know that. And again, I know that there's 39, there's, what was it, the year The Godfather came out, 74.
72 was Godfather, 72. And 74 was Godfather Part 2. And of course, 1976, kind of notorious for a Best Picture lineup that is very much an all-timer. Or was that 1975, the year of movies like Dog Day Afternoon and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? I don't have
all of that in front of me, but I do know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So yes, there are many, many other years from previous decades that are in this conversation. And I didn't do all that homework for this because we focused on 1999 exclusively for this. But I will say, just in broad terms here, I don't know if it's top 5 for me, but probably top 10, maybe. I will say, like, again, there are 3 years that we've already covered that I do prefer over 1999. And I was willing to come on here 6 months ago to say, I think it is incredibly overrated. I was ready to say that.
I was too, but sometimes we can be a little cynical on this show, but not that often.
Not that often. That's the beauty of doing this, though, because you catch up with so many of these movies, or you rewatch a bunch of them. And on the other side of it, once I came up with my top 20, actually I have a top 30 here, and I was going through it, and I was like, I actually kind of love this year, and I understand its reputation way more than I did 6 months ago.
Sure.
Where I was kind of willing to throw it off a little bit. But that's what I've loved about this exercise. And I came to really love a lot of these movies. So coming up with my top 20 was way more challenging, way more difficult than I ever thought it was going to be. But I came to love this year. I really did.
It is a good year. It is a good year. And if we have any pushback on anything, I mean, a lot of it just comes down to its reputation more than anything else. We're just more passionate about other years, and that's as simple as that. But it's not a knock on the year itself, because I think the quality is there. And as we'll talk about with our respective top 10s, especially when we get to, let's say, our top 3s, I could speak for myself and say that, once again, we're talking about a year where there are some all-timers for me, like movies that would probably find a place in my top 100 of all time if I were to do that exercise. My top 3 will probably find homes on a list like that for me.
Yeah, and this is how you know that we practice what we preach, because I could have came on to this show disingenuously just to be a hipster and be like, no, I'm going to push against the grain because I'm different.
Yeah.
And look, that was never the agenda anyway. That's never the agenda for me, ever. I don't care about your hot takes for hot take's sake. If it's genuine, that's different. But if you're just going to be disingenuous, I don't care about your hot takes. I don't care about your clickbait. And that was never the case for me. But 6 months ago, when I put a list together without doing the exercise,
I was a little worried.
There were many other years I liked better. But then I did the work. I went and watched a lot of these movies. I analyzed a bunch of them. I caught up with a bunch that were blind spots. And then realized that, oh, yeah, I get it. I understand why people think 1999 is one of the best years ever for cinema.
I get it too. Yeah,
I get it. I understand. And I'm almost there. Again, I still prefer 2001, 2007, and 2024 of modern, recent, of the 21st century.
Yeah.
But I think it's way more in that conversation than where I was 6 months ago. Hands down.
Yeah, I'm with you.
All right.
Absolutely with you.
Before we get to the top 10, as always, let's go through the top 10 highest grossing films of 1999. This is worldwide gross. You'll never believe this, Brendan. At number 1, Star Wars: The Phantom Menace.
Go figure.
Shocking.
Go figure.
Shocking. $924 million. That's absolutely incredible.
And you know that everyone just went to go see it multiple times because they were trying to convince themselves that they actually liked it. Yeah.
Exactly.
And like I said, I have a little bit more of an appreciation for that film now, but it's not great. It's not great.
It's not great. And number 2, and again, I just love that we're in an era where these things happen. And number 2 is The Sixth Sense. Would never get that today, but that came in at number 2 with $672 million. At number 3, this is a little bit more expected. Toy Story 2.
Yeah.
511 million. Number 4, also expected, The Matrix at 465. Number 5, Tarzan for $48 million there. Number 6, everyone's favorite Mummy, The Mummy, at
Fun
418.
Fun movie. I want to see that franchise come back.
I know. Number 7, Notting Hill at 363.
Have you seen that?
I have. I will say that is one of those movies that I didn't get a chance to revisit for this exercise. So it's not on my list. I think I wanted to prioritize other movies more so than
That's
that
fair.
one. I always thought it was okay.
I saw it for the first time maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. I think it's bad.
Okay.
Wasn't for me. Wasn't for me.
Was it for Brendan? Number 8, The World Is Not Enough at 361.
I sometimes forget that was this year.
Yep. Number 9, American Beauty at 356. And then at number 10, Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me at $312 million.
Which might actually be my favorite Austin Powers movie.
Yeah. That's probably my favorite as well.
It's the the funniest one, I think.
Yeah. Oh, it's hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Plus,
there.
Heather Graham's just a treasure.
Absolutely. Oh, winning best film at the Oscars that year, of course, was American Beauty. Sam Mendes also went on to win best director, I believe.
Yes, that is true. And of course, Kevin Spacey winning best actor.
And Spacey won for best actor. Yes.
Yep. And Alan Ball, I think, winning screenplay as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. People at the time loved that American Beauty.
It was different. It was different. Again, this is another example of a movie that kind of set a trend for what you could do, tonally speaking, with the domestic drama, right?
Yeah.
But then I think we would get much better versions of this type of movie. If anything, American Beauty is just a trial run for better things that even Sam Mendes would do with movies like Revolutionary Road, for instance. I feel like that, in a way, it started something that would only improve with age.
Yep. I agree. I very much do agree with that. Winning the Palme d'Or that year was the film Rosetta, which didn't even get an Oscar nomination, I don't think. I'm not sure when it was released in the States, if it tried to qualify that same year or not. I'm not exactly sure. But it did win the Palme d'Or in 1999. Of course, All About My Mother won the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film. And again, that's a film through today's lens. If today's Academy was voting, that is absolutely a Best Picture nominee. Or at least I think Pedro Almodovar is in for director at the very least. All right. That is 1999. Is there anything else context-wise you want to add here before we get to the top 10?
I don't think so. Like I did mention earlier, so I will highlight this again. It does also represent a time, 1999 specifically, that comedies were just so fearless because many of these romantic comedies were doing things that just you wouldn't really see as much anymore. Did you see the movie Drop Dead Gorgeous, the beauty pageant comedy?
That one is a blind spot for me, unfortunately.
It's really funny. It's crass, but it is really funny. And then there's I guess you call it a dramedy, but it's a movie that has a bit of a cult following now with Natasha Lyonne called But I'm a Cheerleader. And in a way was kind of predictive for how movies can essentially represent queer culture. There is something kind of predictive about that movie, and it also has this wild, goofy Barbie aesthetic to it that is just it's something you wouldn't see comedies go for nowadays as heavily as that one did. And I mostly want to highlight those movies because many of them won't end up on my list per se, but I respect the hell out of so many of these movies from this year that had bold convictions and weren't afraid of the consequences. I really like that.
Yeah. Great year for comedy. Also pretty great year for animated film too.
I was just going to say that. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. Between The Iron Giant, Toy Story 2, South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, and of course Tarzan.
Tarzan's not bad. That's
it's fine. I mean, it's my least favorite of those three by a mile, but
still. Me too. But I think as far as the Disney Renaissance era from that time, I mean, I much prefer Tarzan over Hercules and Pocahontas, for instance.
Yeah, it's still a solid year for animated, like really good year, even with just those three up at the top. But yeah, I don't mind Tarzan. Tarzan's fun.
No, it's fun.
All right, Brennan, let's talk about coffee. I love it. I need it. It is.
What do you think's been in this thing this whole time?
Yes. I had a cup just before we got on here, and so I feel good and energized. I won't be able to sleep tonight, but at least we'll have fun on the show.
Hey, sacrifices have to be made.
Exactly. And I needed the coffee because over the weekend, and I've been telling my oldest, Sam, that we are going to stay up late. He's been asking to stay up late and play video games. And
kind of like a father-son sleepover.
Yeah. I mean, one of those memories from college that I always loved is that me and my friends, we would get together and we would play Call of Duty and we would play the campaign like all the way through, like 6-7 hours, however long it took. You stay up, you start at 8 and you end up at 2-3 in the morning, however long it takes.
Wow.
And you just kind of take turns doing the campaign.
We clearly came from different backgrounds because you were doing that with Call of Duty. I was doing the same thing with my friends, but it was Super Smash Brothers on Nintendo 64. Yeah. We had major tournaments and everything.
Yeah. I mean, Call of Duty was getting real big as I was transitioning into college. So that's what we would do. And so I told Sam, let's do that. So I let him pick the Call of Duty game, and he ended up going with Call of Duty 2, the first one from 2009, I think.
Okay. I think the important question is, did he pick the flavor of Coffee Cult that you'd be drinking to keep you awake?
He did not. He didn't pick that flavor of coffee, but we stayed up late. It was like 2:00 in the morning when we got done. It was a great time. So then all day today, I've been garbling down coffee like it is air. And I've been drinking Coffee Cult and thriving because of it. And I also had a hockey game today. So thanks, Coffee Cult, for keeping me going.
Good job.
It's been incredible. If you need awesome coffee, Coffee Cult is where you got to go. Coffeecult.com, coffee with a K, cult with a A. They only source specialty grade coffee, so you're not getting your store-bought coffee here. This is gourmet coffee. It is fantastic. It is worth the price of admission. It is a little bit pricier than your store-bought coffee because we're talking about gourmet. So
the best of the best.
It's great stuff.
Ethically sourced.
Ethically sourced, of course.
They make sure to look at farms that are run not just ethically, but also that they look at female-run farms as well. So it's really nice to see that as well. So they don't get forgotten.
Exactly. And with the fall on the horizon, the weather is going to change soon. So be sure to get stocked up on your favorite coffee and use our code at checkout and you'll get 15% off. It is one of the best deals they have. That code is ISF25. Again, that code is ISF25. Use that at checkout. You get 15% off. One of the best deals they have, coffeecall.com, and we thank them for their support. All right, Brennan, let's talk about merchandise. Let's talk about the InSession Film Store.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the stuff on our store could probably use a boost, right?
It could use a boost. I think so, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I see what you're doing there.
Yeah, you set me up for success with that one. Thank you.
If you go to the InSession Film Store, well, how do you do that? There's actually a couple of ways you can do that. InSessionFilm.com/store. You can check out a lot of our merch there. Or you can go directly to the source. That is dashery.InSessionFilm.com. And there you'll see all of our t-shirts that we have available. Whether it be this one that Brendan was alluding to here, I could use a boost, which is one of my favorite.
I think it's one of our best ones. Yeah, I think it really is.
But we have other shirts with our logo on them. We have we have an awards themed one. We got a midnight special one. We got a Star Wars. We have all kinds of fun things up there. So
absolutely.
So go to InSessionFilm.com/store. Again, that's one of the best ways to check out all of our great stuff there, or InSessionFilm.dashery.com. And either way, you can check out all that stuff there. And if you go to the Dashery site, I have lowered the price a little bit more than what is, what they suggest or what the normal is, I guess. So you can get them a little bit lower price there. But if you get an InSession Film shirt, it obviously goes back into supporting us, and all the money we get goes directly into making sure this happens each and every week and keeping the website running and all that sort of stuff. So we really do appreciate people that want to check that out. Again, InSessionFilm.com/store, or again, InSessionFilm.dashery.com. Either way, you can see all that stuff there, and we thank you for your support. All right. With that said, are you ready to get to the top 10 then?
Yeah, I am. And I think before we get into it, should we do our usual game, trying to guess how much we're going to have as far as crossover?
Ooh. Oh boy. Okay.
I have a guess. Here. I have a number here. When I'm looking at my current 10
list here. So I'm going to guess 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe I will use my sixth sense to say 6.
Well, just to be different, I'll go ahead and say 5.
6 is a lot, though. It's I don't know if we've ever crossed over on 6 outside of, what was that year, 2004?
Oh yeah, we crossed over 8 times. When in actuality, I look back on my list, it was probably more like 9 times. I think I can. We
crossed over a lot. It's rare that we go that high, though. 4 or 5 is probably more realistic.
That's the average. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, we've never done a year where we've had no crossover.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen again.
That'll never happen.
Yeah, that'll never happen.
And I think I can safely say right now, looking at my list, that's not happening here either.
Nope, not at all. Okay, with that said, let's do it. Let's talk about our top 10 movies of 1999. Brendan, what do you got at number 10?
Number 10, I'm going with an animated movie, and I'm going with a comedy, and I think it's my representation of how fearless comedies were at the time, and maybe it's even more timely now. But my number 10 is South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah. And I say this as someone that isn't really the biggest fan of South Park as a show. I've enjoyed the show. I've enjoyed the episodes I've seen, and there are many episodes I absolutely love, but I don't actively keep up with it. I'm not watching it now, even though I'm aware of some of the recent controversy that recent episodes have garnered that I absolutely love about the show. We don't have to get into that now, but I've always respected the audacity of what that show is about. And 2 years after it first aired, they finally make a movie given the popularity of it all. And basically, Trey Parker and Matt Stone make a movie about the negative response of their own brand. By doing so, it not only was at the time a great critique on censorship as it relates to art and entertainment, but it's even more prevalent now, given the way that young minds can literally be warped by these things and the way it can also get twisted out of proportion because of some ignorant adults. I love that about it. I think it's comedically very well handled. It represents how this kind of silly and crass humor actually does have some type of sophisticated point to it, which ultimately was the criticism South Park faced at the time. But this movie kind of proved those naysayers wrong, I think. Yep. And even disregarding that commentary, what's kind of shocking about this movie is that it's also an amazing musical. Like, just taking it as a musical, it's a great musical. The songs are great. The musical numbers are great. This movie was nominated for an Oscar for Best Original Song for freaking Blame Canada. Like, that is one of the, as far as the Best Original Song category over the years, the two that I love the most, it's that nomination for Blame Canada and 3-6 Mafia winning for Hustle and Flow.
Just crazy.
I just love that is actually part of film history. And
that's the one element of the old Academy that I wish would become a part of this new Academy. The new Academy overall is much, much better. But when it comes to the music categories, they have gotten objectively worse. There were at least those inspired picks in the late 90s and early 2000s. I want to get back to that.
It's almost like the voting bodies sort of swapped between these categories in a way, right? Yeah, I'm with you. I wish we saw a few more daring choices, such as Hard Out Here for a Pimp or Blame Canada, as we saw here with South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. But I do think it's even more timely now, and it is a very funny movie. I think it's great. I think it's great, and kind of represents what I said earlier about how fearless comedies were in this particular year. And I wanted to at least have something that represented that.
Yeah, no, this is a really great movie. And again, earlier, as I stated, I don't care for hot take culture when it's disingenuous. So please keep that in mind when I say this. South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut is my vote for Best Animated Film in 1999. I think it is the best one. And a lot of it comes down to what you were saying as far as how timely and relevant this still is as a satire, despite this coming out 26 years ago. Good Lord, I am old. But it is very funny. It is utterly ridiculous. It's extremely crude. It's everything you'd want from a South Park movie. And yes, it is absolutely magical as a musical. It is really, really great. I think it's smart, clever. And I think part of my response is that I'm with you. I don't really watch South Park all that much in my day-to-day life. And yet I come into this I come out of this, being the biggest fan of this movie. I think it is
it does stand on its own very well.
It does.
I'm actually kind of surprised to hear you say that it would get your vote for the animation category. Now, let me ask you this, and you don't have to answer it directly or give a specific film to answer it.
Oh, actually, I totally lied. No, I totally lied.
I was gonna say, because I feel like there's another animated film from this year.
It's my number two. It's my number two. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, and we don't have to say what that animated film is that you would probably put at number 1 because something tells me it's in your top 10. So we can talk about that later. But I was kind of surprised to hear you say it would get your vote, given a particular film that I know.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Because I was looking at the rest of my list and it just skipped over. I totally forgot there for a moment, but yeah, this is number 18 on my list. So I do love it. It does make my top 20. So I'm with you.
Good stuff.
Awesome movie. My number 10, I'm going with one of my favorite filmmakers that I want to say is working today, but he isn't working today, and I desperately need him to be working today because my love for Spike Jonze holds no bounds. And I need him to make another movie. It has been way too long since Spike Jonze has made a feature film. But I love being John Malkovich. It's my number 10 here.
Okay.
Wildly inventive about, this movie about identity, desire, the hunger to escape oneself. It explores these ideas of selfhood and the absurdity of control exploitation. Charlie Kaufman's script is incredible and how it balances its surreal comedy with this existential dread that these characters are experiencing, and the tonal precision of that in Jones's direction is quite immaculate as well. This film somehow is bizarre and hilarious and offbeat, but its emotions are equally grounded and felt. And I just love how all of that comes together. John Malkovich's self-parody here, I think, is one of cinema's great meta performances. He really is terrific here.
Malkovich.
Just what a moment. What a moment. And, it's also one of those movies that that features one of my favorite surprise performances of
ever.
I don't. Maybe I was going to say that, but I didn't want to sound too facetious. But I'm just not the biggest Cameron Diaz fan. I'm not. I typically do not love her as a performer, and I think she oozes charm and empathy, and she might be my favorite thing about that movie. And I obviously love this movie. It's my number 10 here, and her performance might be the best thing about it. And I would have never have guessed that that's something that would ever come out of my mouth. And that is impactful. That to me is a big reason why this sits here in my top 10 alongside the Spike Jonze of it all, the Charlie Kaufman of it all. I just really deeply love this movie. I need Spike Jonze to make another one. Pronto.
I'd like to see Jonze and Kaufman get back together and do a third feature between this and adaptation, as far as how their track record is concerned. And I do agree with you. Absolutely, yeah. Make it all connect, because adaptation was in many ways a response to this. So maybe their third feature will be, I don't know, somehow about the making of adaptation. I don't know.
They'll figure it out.
Yeah, they'll figure out to tie it all together in some way. But yeah, Cameron Diaz, I agree, definitely the unsung hero of the movie. Not even unsung. She is the sung hero. People acknowledge her performance all the time, and rightfully so. As a person of a sexual awakening of sorts, I think it is a very moving story. This is my number, what is that? I think I have it at number 13 in my top 20. So it is in my top 20 for sure. It's interesting when you look at the films of Charlie Kaufman specifically, when you compare it to the likes of Adaptation, Synecdoche, New York, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I'm thinking of Ending Things as well. And obviously not all of these were directed by Spike Jonze. A lot of them were also directed by Charlie Kaufman himself, but we tend to cite or categorize all of his films together in a way, right? It's kind of interesting how being John Malkovich is probably his most accessible of all of them. I tend to prefer his stuff when it gets even more metaphysical. That's why I still prefer movies like Adaptation and Synecdoche, New York over being John Malkovich, which is not really a knock on this movie. It's just I tend to prefer the weirdness of the other ones a little bit more. It's just more of a me thing. And I like how he's able to find some hidden beauty in those other abstractions as opposed to this one, which does have a bit more of a linear format, even though it does get very strange by the back end. But I still think it's a very, very good movie.
Well, that's what's wild about Spike Jonze that I really love, because honestly, I don't really disagree with a lot of what you're saying. And it's very possible this is actually my least favorite Spike Jonze film.
It is. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Of the 4 narrative films he's done between this, Adaptation, Her, and Where the Wild Things Are. I much prefer
the other 3. Yeah.
I do too. Yeah.
And that being said, this is still one of the top 10 movies of 1999 for me. So like,
I'm still saying it's one of the best as well.
Yeah, like it's really
so says a lot about his track record.
Yeah, when your worst feature is still in the top 10 of what many people consider to be the best year for cinema, okay, I'd say you're doing pretty well. You're doing great. But that's why I need him back. I need him back in my life.
Only certain filmmakers can have that magical touch where every time they direct a movie, it becomes a pretty competitive top 10 contender in a way. Paul Thomas Anderson is another one. Martin Scorsese is another one. Interestingly, 2 filmmakers who had films in 1999. Maybe we'll talk about some of them as well. I'll just simply say that.
Absolutely. All right. So Spike Jonze being John Malkovich, I love it. It is my number 10 here. So number 9, what do you got?
So number 9 is one of my favorite foreign language films of the year. I'm going with, I never knew how to pronounce this guy's name, so I'm going to try my best. Tom Tykwer. I'm going with Run Lola Run for my number 9.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a fun movie.
It's a really fun movie. And I think part of that sense of fun is why I have it so high here, because this movie is just so alive. The filmmaking here is wild and just ridiculous and dares to be bold and loud and audacious in ways that we just don't see as much of anymore. And I think even underneath that almost video game like aesthetic that it's going for, there is something truly human about the way it treats chaos theory and the way that little things in our lives, if one minor thing happens differently, it changes your entire trajectory as to where your life goes. Basically, this is my multiverse of madness. That's the way I call this movie.
Fair enough.
And it kind of has a similar idea in a way that these almost middling, inconsequential events can spearhead into various avenues and split different timelines up. And the way that it treats Lola as a character that is trying to find some version of control over where she takes her own life, I do think there is something cathartic about it, primarily given the central relationship at play, which I do think oozes a lot of passion. And I do think these performances are very good in emulating that. Just as a movie that feels so alive like this, I just found that so refreshing. And one of the things I took away from the year 1999 when filmmakers were daring to do certain things that you just don't see as much of anymore. So I think this is a very fun movie, a very breezy movie, given how short that it is. It's not even 90 minutes long, but it's no coincidence, or not a surprise, I should say, that Tom Tykwer would end up working with the Wachowski sisters later on, because they both had a very similar audaciousness and boldness to their respective films. And I really like this one for those same reasons.
Yeah, this is an incredibly infectious movie. I loved its vibrancy and kineticism. It packs more than you would think into its 3 segments in regards to free roll, as you're talking about, and chaos theory, despite the similarities and where things go with its central characters. There's actually more there, and it's a little bit of a sleight of hand, because it's so frenetic that you would think that this is more of an exercise in filmmaking and its aesthetics and tone, of course. But I think there's actually more beneath the surface than you might think, given
it's a thoughtful
cinematics.
movie. It's a thoughtful movie, yeah.
It is thoughtful. I really like it a lot. This is a great example of what I was mentioning earlier in terms of the depth of 1999, because I have a top 30 here that I think is really great. And any film in my 21 through 30, put it anywhere in my 10 through 15, that's perfectly fine. I probably won't sleep much at night, or I won't lose sleep much, I should say. I currently have this at 22.
Okay.
And again, really love it a lot. Again, just speaks to the depth of the year, because I do think it's great. It's a very, very good movie. All right. My number 9, I am going to the legendary Abbas Kiarostami here, The Wind Will Carry Us. I do wonder if this is a film that I am underrating a little bit. I think this film could potentially be a top 5 movie of its year. But
is this your Beau Travail of the year?
Maybe. I did think about that a little bit, but the films that I have in my top 5, I've just spent more time with and feel more solidified with, that I have them currently in that top 5. But perhaps this could end up being one of those Beau Travail, it climbs the ranks for me. But I really love this film because it examines these ideas of morality and tradition, and how we have this relationship between modernity and these rituals that we engage with. It's, of course, Abbas Kiarostami, so there is a minimalistic approach to this film. There's a lot of long takes. There's a lot of poetic observation that I think is absolutely stunning here. Very meditative, as again you expect with Kiarostami, but it is rich in its observations on death and again the rituals, the profundity of the mundane, and obviously that's a theme that we quite love in movies. And this is very much about the beauty and the mundane. It's essentially about, if you haven't seen it, it's essentially about this man who is doing this job. He goes to this rural village and he is trying to, he's waiting for this woman to die because there's something he has to do once that happens. But a lot of the film is him just sitting there waiting for a week.
Very arrogantly, very cynically. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, amongst the observations of the film, there is a quiet humor to it that wonderfully juxtaposes the heftier philosophies of the film. There's a lovely sweetness to it, but there's something about the film's routines and patterns that taps into the beauty of everyday life that I think is really great. And I love the quiet stillness of this film and what it has to say about those routines that we experience. So I do really love this a lot. I've been thinking about this pretty much nonstop since July when I came across this one. It's my number 9 here.
Yeah, the way you talk about routines and the mundane and beauty within our surroundings like that, that's a pretty common theme for quite a few films I noticed in 1999. There's another one in particular that I'll get to later. In fact, there's actually a nice transition point between this film and my number 8 that I'll get to in just a moment. But I really like this film quite a bit as well. I currently have this around, I think I have this around 26 right now, but the reason why I have it as low as I do is because this was the most recent film I caught up with in preparation for this retrospective, which means I just watched this yesterday. And given the type of film that it is, I just don't feel ready to confidently say where it ranks for me. Like, I'm still processing a lot of it, but I do agree with a lot of what you're saying. There's a lot of special qualities here, given not just the routines of it all, but the way it analyzes lifestyle differences between village life and city life, which is also very apparent here without ever really taking place in an urban area whatsoever. It doesn't get literal in that regard. But that is definitely another part of this movie that is very much felt given some of these dynamics for sure.
Yeah. And as much as I love its beauty and the mundane approach, and there's a lot of compelling sequences in the film as it relates to that. But in complement to that, the film is extremely painterly. It's beautifully
I was going to say,
well shot.
It might be the best looking movie of 1999.
It is.
I might at least go that far.
Yeah, it's really, really great. I am glad that I watched this in July. I don't necessarily push back against, like the last thing I wrote on Letterboxd when I first watched this is like, I'm going to have to wrestle with this more. Like I look forward to wrestling with this because this is a movie you do have to sit on and really contemplate what it's just a movie that just sits with you for a long time.
Yeah, there are some movies you almost don't want to log on Letterboxd right away because you don't feel ready to, just given the type of movie that it is. And this is one of them. Yeah. I might just let this linger for a bit before I feel like I can give it a confident analysis. I don't know if it would end up in my top 10 in the grand scheme of things, but I could see it working its way into my top 20. Like I could see that happening at least.
Yeah. Fair enough. I love it. I think it is easily one of the best of 99. It's my number 9 here. And again, I think I might be underrating it. I think this actually probably is a top 5 movie of 99, but even a few months removed, I'm still wrestling with this.
It's an interesting movie. Yeah, it really is.
I love it. I deeply love it. I think it is one of Kiarostami's best works for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you got at number 8?
Number 8, this is where I was talking about how there is actually a correlation between The Wind Will Carry Us and my number 8 pick, because something I was talking about with The Wind Will Carry Us is this idea of lifestyle differences between urban life and village life. And I feel like that's also very apparent in Zhang Yimou's Not One Less, which is my number 8 pick. So in a way, kind of a decent companion piece of sorts to The Wind Will Carry Us. They certainly have different tonal energies and different thematic agendas, and they ultimately try to move you in very different ways. I would say a movie like Not One Less, given the way it ends, probably feels a bit more traditional by comparison. Maybe a bit, it definitely pulls from more like Western influences, I'd say. But I still think it's a very powerful film, given not just how it portrays the importance of village life and the education system in village life, and how many of us who have better means by comparison will just simply ignore these people. And I think there's something devastating about that. But just the way that it's made in such a neo-realistic type way is something that I still find very moving about it. Clearly, Zhang Yimou is very inspired by the likes of Vittorio De Sica's Bicycle Thieves or Satyajit Ray's Padre Panchali. And I'm not necessarily saying the movie is as good as those, because those are among the greatest movies ever made, but I still think it's in pretty good company with those types of films. And I think it handles those neo-realistic qualities with a lot of grace and lets its non-professional actors do things that traditional actors probably would oversell. And I like how undersold that this movie feels. And of course leads to a climax that I found utterly breathtaking. So utterly wild that Zhang Yimou would go on to direct a movie like Hero only a few years later. But I love the distinction here. I think it's a very powerful movie, a very simple movie, very small movie, but I still think a beautiful one nonetheless.
Yeah, I think this is beautiful as well. This is one of those homework movies that added to that evolution I talked about earlier of going, I don't know how good this year is, to I think this is a pretty good year. And Not One Less is certainly one of those. Similarly, as I noted with The Wind Will Carry Us, I hadn't seen either of those two movies until we started to do this exercise. And, I love Amos Kiarostami, so I was not at all surprised that I responded to that film the way that I did. Not One Less, I'm also not terribly surprised that I responded to this, given that I quite love Zhang Yimou as well. But to your point, at least in our experience with him, because we've been going backwards, this was quite the antithetical experience with Zhang Yimou. And ironically, I caught up with this probably a few weeks after The Wind Will Carry Us. And man, this film draws a lot of inspiration from Kiarostami's neorealistic work. So it is kind of incredible, to your point. I know you brought this up a moment ago, like the similarities between the two are quite apparent for sure. I very much thought about that once I caught up with Not One Less. And to your point earlier about its comparisons to The Bicycle Thief and movies of that ilk.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think this film is very much in that conversation. Maybe underratedly so. I don't know if people talk about it.
Fair point.
As much as they should, because I do think it's very much up there. So I again, going back to the idea of, I really love the depth of this year more so than I ever thought before. I have this at 20.
Okay.
I really love this film a lot, and right now I have it at 20.
Good spot.
Really
still in the
good
top
movie,
20.
though.
Good
Yeah,
stuff.
Still in the top 20. Really like it a lot. Okay. So up until probably a week ago, this film was sitting just outside of my top 10.
Okay.
And then I started to think about this filmmaker more, how much I've really come to love him a lot, despite how polarized he's been at times. I think about the performances of this movie. I think about the restrained, deliberate pacing of this film. I think about its cinematography, which might be overlooked a little bit because people want to talk about its premise and its twist, its reveals at the end of the film. I think this film is really quite great. Maybe also I'm underrating it here. I know it's a big part of the legacy of 99. So when thinking about this film a little bit more, I had to have it in my 10, and I landed at 8 for the time being. And that is M. Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense.
Okay.
I have a number 8 here.
Well, I'll just come out and say I feel like it's only appropriate that at least one of us has it in 6th place, which is me.
Which is you. Fair enough. So I should have. I really wanted it to mathematically work out that way. I just couldn't really justify it in my mind.
I kind of manipulated it to be in 6th place just to be a fun little geezer about it. But
fair enough.
Needless to say, this is our first crossover in our top 10s, it looks like.
Okay, sounds good. Then we can certainly talk about it. We've talked about this movie before on the show. Maybe we don't have to go too much into it here, but a few weeks ago we did performances of the year, and I talked quite at length about Haley Joel Osment. What he brings to this film, I know it's trite, but I truly do believe this is one of the best child performances we've ever seen. And if anything, he only outdoes himself 2 years later. Like, he gives 2 of the very best child performances around that time. And I think what he brings here is stunning. I love his chemistry with Bruce Willis. I love what he delivers here in terms of the understated depth of his performance, the grounding of the twist. He's immaculate in all of that. I love what Shyamalan does here as a filmmaker as well. And given the writing here and what we get with the twist at the end, everything has to all the T's have to be crossed and the I's dotted in order for it to work as a mystery, but also not come off as this schmaltzy, tacky ghost story. And I don't think it comes off that way at all. Like, he absolutely nailed the pacing, the grounding, the emotion of it. Of course, it's a deeply emotional movie, and it is a stunner. It's great. I mean, this is certainly M. Night at his best, and I deeply love it. It's right here.
I agree. That's why it's at number 6 for me. And I can only imagine that a lot of working child actors now, and even back then, probably absolutely hated Haley Joel Osment, because when you think of the top 5 greatest child performances of all time, he already had 2 of them at that time. Between this and AI, artificial intelligence, which you and I have talked to death about on this show many times. What I love so much about The Sixth Sense is that it's also simultaneously one of the biggest problems with 1999 and how it sort of created trends that went in the wrong direction, because so many horror thrillers came out after 1999 in response to The Sixth Sense by trying to give twist endings that simply just worked for shock value. And that's all they did. They took the movie's aesthetics and its maneuvers, but they never took its thinking. What makes The Sixth Sense so great now when you watch it knowing what its twist is, it actually makes the movie better in a way when you start to find the little tricks and the ways that Shyamalan kind of cheats to arrive at that payoff, but it's also the ways that he does it more to serve the drama of the story as opposed to just the plot. And the way he treats that big reveal as really an emotional payoff more than anything else, I think is the most artful thing about it. And that is something that we have to really give him credit for. The fact that it was such a surprise and became such a huge hit because of that surprise. But it really works because it actually is a dramatic payoff that makes sense for the movie and not just for the surprise of it. In a way, I think the movie actually gets better upon repeat. At least it does for me. And that's kind of a special quality, I think, for a movie like this that's defined by its ending.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's a film it almost seems like it's built for that first time experience and that reveal. But in actuality, it is a film that only gets better on repeat viewings. It's a striking magic trick. I don't know how he pulled it off, but he did.
It's great.
All right. Number 7, I believe, is where we're at.
Yep, so that was number 8 for you. So we'll have to skip me at number 6 when we get to that point. But let's get to our number 7 picks. My number 7 is another comedy from this year. This one a bit more sophisticated in a way when compared to South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. But I am a big fan of Alexander Payne's Election. So that's my number 7 here.
Okay, good stuff.
Also kind of interesting that Alexander Payne would make 2 movies set in a high school, or at least a school of sorts, and they are completely different vibes between this and The Holdovers.
I know.
Yeah. But I just I love the distinction there, and I love the deep-rooted cynicism and anger that's all over something like Election. And even though that this is about a high school class presidency, it's also weirdly one of the most accurate depictions of the current electoral process that we've ever seen in a movie. And I think that's just kind of shocking in how well it works in that way. Every performance here, I think, delivers some type of comedic edge that I don't think I've ever seen these actors do, especially Reese Witherspoon giving one of the best performances of the year, I think. I didn't really get a chance to talk about her that much when we did our best performances of 1999. She didn't quite crack my top 5, but I think it is a top 10 performance from this year. It's a striking bit of comedic timing, but also there's a deep-rooted pain and sadness there that a lot of these characters have that they're just not willing to address, which is ultimately why I absolutely love the voiceover narration in this movie. And voiceover is something I don't really like all that much. But I think this is one of the greatest uses of it I've ever seen in a movie, primarily because if you really listen carefully, you notice that none of these characters who voice over for their own respective stories, none of them are really speaking the truth at all. Like they're like in a way, it's all about how there is really no objectivity whatsoever from their perspectives when each character is trying to tell their respective stories as quote unquote the truth. It's this whole like unreliable narrator idea. And I think Election is one of the greatest examples of that I've seen of this particular era in film. And that's, if you can win me over like that when it comes to voiceover narration, you're really doing something right. Because this one actually has a very interesting point to it. So I did want to highlight that, you know, from a script writing standpoint, it's one of the smartest films of 1999, given how it's able to twist what those mean and the way that truth can be twisted in such a way that it's there to serve the person who's simply telling that version of the truth. And it might not actually be true. It's just their perspective. And I think that's a very affable notion. Very, very funny movie too. I really like this one.
Yeah, very funny. And unless things change fundamentally in this country, this will be a movie that is always appropriate. This is a film that will always age extremely well.
It's kind of a documentary.
It is kind of a documentary. I love it as well. I think it's very funny. It's biting. I love the performances here. The only criticism I have of the film is the handling of Tammy. I really like the character a lot, but I do think she gets lost in places. It doesn't always work for me, even if Campbell gives a pretty electric performance. So overall, it's a film I do really like. That's the only thing that keeps this film out of my top 10 and even my top 20. I have this at 24, but I do really like the film a lot. And I love, like with all Alexander Payne movies, I don't just like the back and forth banter, which is great here. Obviously, I love that about all of his movies, but the endless energy of this film is a riot. It's really fantastic. It's a really easy breezy movie to watch, and I love it. But it's not lacking in that satire to chew on. Like it's still giving you a little.
It's got stuff. It's got stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, big fan of Election. I do really like that movie as well. All right, number 7 for me. This comes from a director that is having a big year in 2025. This is Steven Soderbergh. The Limey for me sits here at number 7.
Really wrestled with this one. It's my number 11. Just missed my top 10.
Just misses Brendan's top 10. Man, I fell in love with this movie. And it's interesting. I don't know. Maybe it's because Soderbergh is having such a great year. His 2 movies that came out earlier in the year, Brendan and I were champions of. His third film, The Christophers, just released over at TIFF. And
hearing some mixed things about that one,
which only makes me excited because,
of course, yeah.
The people
I don't say that as
down on the first 2 movies.
Yeah, I don't say that with fear. I say that with, okay, this guy's trying things.
Yeah, I'm curious, really curious. Either way, maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know. I hadn't seen The Limey in some time, but my God, I love that film. I mean, it's got some incredible editing. It has its own vibrancy that's really great, but I also think it's Soderbergh like reshaping that vibrancy into something that's actually this meditation on regret and aging and time and memory, the futility of dwelling on the past, and then anchoring all of that is Terrence Stamp's ferocious performance. He is absolutely stunning in that film, and it's just really brilliant how the film deconstructs that tough guy archetype into something that's tragic rather than something that is triumphant. And Soderbergh is certainly a big part of that, but Stamp working beside him hand in hand is also a huge reason that is so resonant and emotional once you get to the end of the film.
Yeah.
And it's really great. You know, I've always thought that Out of Sight is my favorite film of that era for Soderbergh, but and look, that film is still great, don't get me wrong, but I don't know, there's something about The Limey and how it just really struck a chord with me on this rewatch that it's making me reconsider that a little bit.
Well, yeah, in a way, The Limey sort of represents the Soderbergh of today. Like, it kind of feels like a movie that Soderbergh would make nowadays, the way he experiments with form and things like that, because The Limey is a very experimental movie. And it's going to be one of those movies that not everyone goes for. For those who are big fans of movies like, let's say, Out of Sight or Ocean's 11, for instance, Aaron Brockovich, or even Traffic, some of these people might not go for The Limey, because it's a very hazy movie. It's a non-linear movie. It's kind of hard to follow. And honestly, if it weren't for Terrence Stamp's performance, I'm not even sure how much I would be on board with it. But he is the glue that holds the emotional.
See, I think I would be on board with it anyway.
I probably would be too, because like I just don't know how strong it would be without his performance, because he finds some type of emotional core that it's almost like he's co-directing the movie alongside Soderbergh.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I guess I love the fractured editing and the experimentation. It obviously is there to complement the mindset and the psychology of the Stamp character. But you are right that amongst the ferociousness inside of the deconstruction of the tough guy archetype, there is an emotional nucleus that the Stamp taps into immaculately. And that is important for the film working. I do agree with you there. So, but thankfully Stamp is the one that was cast and he gives that performance. So we don't have to worry about the what if. It very much.
Oh no, the movie's great. Yeah, the movie's really good. Like I said, it's my number 11,
good.
And it kind of hurts me that it didn't quite make my top 10.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, so number 6, which is where we're at now, that was
The Sixth Sense for me.
The Sixth Sense for you. So to my number 6.
Sure.
I'm curious if this one is on your list. When you asked me earlier how much crossover we were going to have, this one came to mind, so we'll see. For my number 6, I'm going down the manhole here. This is The Insider.
Okay. This is my number 4.
Number 4. All right. There you go. One of the best political thrillers of our time. It is absolutely stunning. I love what Michael Mann is doing here in terms of exposing corruption and the personal toll that has on the individuals involved. I think that's what's phenomenal about Russell Crowe and his performance. It's restrained yet explosive, and how the character finds himself embroiled in everything that we see here. Same thing with Pacino's character in some ways. And, you know, I feel like I saw this on Twitter recently, Pacino's character and what he chooses at the end as it relates to what we've seen recently with CBS News and some of the choices they've made politically, which again, I'll stay vague, you know, not to get into that rabbit hole, but it does kind of give weight to this film and what the choices these characters are making and what they're standing up for. Yeah. It is kind of incredible how meta it's become as a result of what we are experiencing now in real life. And then just simultaneously as a movie, I mean, this is Michael Mann at his best in terms of the craft, how this unfolds as this procedural, but it's this psychological unraveling at the same time. It's so wonderfully shot. The score, like, it is such a really, it's so well made in addition to what Michael Mann is trying to examine here in terms of truth and ethics and power. It's fantastic. I love it.
I agree.
Number 6.
I agree. It allows us to talk about it very briefly and save some time by you basically just stealing a lot of my thunder there. I think this is one of the best movies ever made about journalistic integrity. I think it even if that means putting your personal life and your family on the line, understanding the importance of that. And this is a movie that doesn't shy away from the consequences of it. It's a movie that's all about consequence and the psychological pain that comes about that in a very Michael Mann-like way. So he treats that psychological pain in a very moody like way. That's very much his thing. And you sense that in even some of his crime capers like Manhunter, for instance, or Heat. It's all over those movies. And he brings that to a new genre of sorts, the political conspiracy thriller, as you were saying. And it probably is my favorite Michael Mann film. As I think about his entire filmography, that's why I have it as high as I do. I have it at number 4. And this is one of those movies where if I were to go through that exercise and think about some of my all-time favorite movies, this could come close. This is certainly in the conversation for me. So this is where we're getting to those heavy hitters. This is one of those movies that on Letterboxd, I give it a perfect 5. I think it's a perfect movie of its kind. I think it's quite great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty close to that. The first time I watched this, or the first time I logged it, I should say, on Letterboxd, I gave it, I think, 4.5. I mean, sure. I mean, I pretty much think this film is a masterpiece. So it's not quite my favorite Mann film, but that's because Michael Mann is one of those movies where I think every one of his films is a masterpiece. I say somewhat facetiously.
Which one's your favorite?
Like, seriously.
Which one's your favorite again? Is it Manhunter?
Manhunter. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But it's also a little bit of that. What's the latest film of his that you've seen? It's a little bit of that as well.
Yeah.
No. But The Insiders, it's incredible. It's absolutely up there with one
top
of his
3
best.
at worst, probably.
Yeah, and I will say we're kind of at the point where some of these are interchangeable for me. I very much debated putting this higher as well. I ultimately landed here at number 6, but it's very much in that 3, 4, 5 territory as well.
Honestly, yeah, I feel like my top 3, maybe even top 4 here are the ones that were the most set in stone, but the rest of my top 10 are kind of they've got some movability in a way. So I can agree with you there.
Yeah, for sure. At the very least, because I am quite high on these top 4, but yeah, the film that I have right next to it at 5, sure, that could be flip-flop, no problem. Because they're both great. They're both really great. So anyway,
great, yeah.
All that said, it's at number 6 here on my list. You had The Sixth Sense at your number 6, and we are now to our top 5.
Our top 5, yeah.
So what do you got at number 5?
My number 5, Bringing Out the Dead. Martin Scorsese, Paul Schrader working together once again.
Good stuff here.
Yeah. There are some days I think this might sound hot takey, but I don't mean it to be. There are some days that this could be my favorite Scorsese Paul Schrader pairing, even though Taxi Driver is sitting there screaming loudly like pick me. And in actuality, that probably is the better movie, but there's something about the hallucinatory vibes of Bringing Out the Dead that I just absolutely love. It's the best way I can describe this movie is that it just feels so sleep deprived, which I think makes sense given the professions at play here. It allows the film to develop this hallucinatory sense, this dreamlike quality that almost makes movies like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas feel coherent by comparison. And I also think as a movie about New York City, which is something that obviously Scorsese has depicted before, even working with Paul Schrader, with a movie like Taxi Driver, they almost work as companion pieces as some of the scariest depictions of New York City I've ever seen in movies. And I think this is another great example of that. It captures the grime and the hallucinatory vibes of it so well. And on top of that, this is surprisingly one of Scorsese's funniest movies. This movie's kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
And it's a movie that feels like it's much like its lead character of Frank Pierce, played by Nicolas Cage. It's a movie that just constantly feels like it's teetering on the edge of insanity at every turn. And I think that mirrors his headspace very well, and the feelings of regret he has for past patients he couldn't save, essentially. And there's more to it than that I'm sure we can get into in a later episode. This is a movie that really earns the right to be reviewed in full someday, because there's a lot to talk about here. It's a very intense movie. But part of the reason why I have it so high on my list here for 1999 is a lot of it does come down to the vibe of it all. It carries a vibe that I just don't think I've ever seen any other film have, which just makes it such a unique experience for sure. I love this movie quite a bit.
This is the film that I am most heartbroken that's just outside my top 10. I struggled with this quite a lot, to be perfectly transparent. like there, yeah. I mean, I'd say at least the two outside are top 10 movies as far as I'm concerned, but math is what it is. This currently sits at 12 for me.
Okay.
But man, I was heartbroken because I agree. I completely agree. This film is surprisingly quite funny, but I think beyond its humor, and I do love Scorsese's diverting movies, but there is something about his investigation of spiritualism that I am equally moved by. And when you're working with Paul Schrader, you're going to have a man in existential crisis that just comes with the territory with Paul Schrader. That's obviously what you get here for all the reasons you talked about. And I find it utterly engrossing. It is so, so good. Underrated for sure. And genuinely one of the best films of 99 as far as I'm concerned. I love it. Again, I have it at 12, but I still consider it a top 10 movie. Math is
good stuff. Good stuff.
All right, number 5 for me, I'm going to the legendary Stanley Kubrick. Eyes Wide Shut is my number 5 here.
Okay.
A dreamlike exploration of jealousy and desire and marital honesty. I hope you're experiencing some marital honesty over there, Brendan. But my God, do I love this movie and all of its blurry murkiness. This film is absolutely incredible. Tom Cruise, we talked about his performance in Magnolia during our review of Magnolia, and he does give the better performance in Magnolia in 99, to be clear on that. But I do love him here as this guy drifting through fantasy and reality, making his way into this world of secret societies and mask and unfettered eroticism. It is incredible what Kubrick does here with this character and creating these unforgettable images that have also come to define 1999 in a lot of ways. And I love the weird quirkiness of this film and what Cruise's character kind of experiences here in terms of the psychological unraveling that we see with the character. I think this is a brilliant erotic thriller, great drama, and I deeply love it. I think as far as this movie questioning not just social institutions, but how sexuality is kind of innate in it all, I think it's quite provocative. And I think Kubrick, he does it in wonderfully Kubrick ways. That is brilliant. It's masterfully shot and edited. I love the tone here, love the precision of the storytelling. My number 5.
Yeah, there is a lot that I agree with you with regard to what you have to say about this movie. In totality, I never fully love this one. This is one of those Kubrick films I never fully got on board with, and I think it's one of those movies that I guess you can say I just feel like it's maybe a little bit less than the sum of its parts, because I think there are individual parts here that rank among some of the best things I've seen in a Kubrick film. And I think a lot of it comes down to the sequences like the ones you're talking about. Mostly if it involves Tom Cruise just kind of meandering around the city, not saying anything, and some of the encounters that he has, that I think that's when the movie's at its best. Like some of the voiceless moments here, I think are when the movie is at its best. There are other moments where I feel like it is a little plotting. Like it does kind of have some plotting maneuvers in order to get to certain points where it almost feels like those were the moments where Kubrick was sadly unable to finish the movie and someone else had to come in and piece certain things together. I kind of feel those breaking points in this movie on occasion, which is why it has always been kind of a middling Kubrick film that I still like quite a bit. It's like I'm not disregarding it completely. It's kind of one of those that would probably sit around the 3.5 out of 5 star range for me on Letterboxd. But sadly, this is one of those that I know has kind of helped define the reputation of 1999 that I'm not quite there yet. I can never quite get there with this movie, unfortunately. I still like it though. It's just not one of my favorites.
Yeah, fair enough. I watched this a couple of years ago and I fell for it immediately. And I did revisit this some months ago in preparation for this as well, and have only come to love it more. And good. I don't know. I think there's just something about its idiosyncratic qualities, its sexuality, its unfettered energy and imagery that I think is quite propulsive. And I don't know. It somewhat tethers to what you were saying earlier in terms of some of the the bold movies that we got this year. And this isn't a flat out comedy or anything like that. It's a Kubrick film after all. But I think it has some of that same energy though. There's just
I give it that,
a bold quality to this film that it just doesn't care what you think, and it's
I agree with that. Yeah, there was nothing like it at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Kidman is fantastic in this film. I do think Cruise is also quite good. And yeah, just I think as far as a modern movie about marriage, and I do also love that the thematic revelation of this film is extremely simple. Like that last exchange between Kidman and Cruise at the end is kind of like this hilarious joke that gives weight to the film's themes while also rendering it simple and I don't know, like kind of like there's nothing truly profound about it until you think about the depths of marriage and how you get caught up in all of these things, and really the answers to conflict is really quite simple.
I kind of wonder
it's so good.
I wonder if this has anything to do with Cruise and Kidman's real life marriage unraveling. Given the fact that didn't they divorce, I think, only 2 years after this movie came out?
Yeah, something like that. So
yeah. So perhaps this is one of the earliest examples of how meta you can get in movies.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, I deeply love it. I think this is great.
Yeah, so I admire it. I admire it quite a bit, though.
All right, number 4. What do you got at number 4?
So number 4 was The Insider for me, which we already talked about.
Oh yeah, number 4 was The Insider for you. I presume. Well, no, I don't have to presume. Mathematically, this is very much true. At number 4, this is going to be film a little bit higher on your list, but I am settling at number 4 here with the great David Lynch. This is where the straight story comes into the fold for me.
All right, and this is number 42 for me.
42. So this, if I remember correctly, this might even be your number 1. I know this is really, really high for you.
It's my number 2. It's my number 2.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I love this movie. I know we've talked about it a little bit in recent weeks, but David Lynch, man, there was no one else like him. I don't know if anyone else could make this film, especially the way that he makes this film. But David Lynch being one of the great sentimentalists, I love what he brings to this film, this gentle, meditative movie about reconciliation and aging and humility and forgiveness and the literal long road toward making amends that this film is. And it's really great. Richard Farnsworth gives a performance for the ages. Absolutely incredible. He should have won the Oscar. He should have won the Oscar.
He absolutely should have. Yeah.
Profoundly moving, absolutely stunning performance. I love the slow pace of the film. I love how it's going to take its time. It's going to be patient. There's a great little score here. I love the grounded realism that Lynch brings to the aesthetics and the craft of the film. And just the emotional core of this film. It's one that kind of sneaks up on you. It's not a film that's overwhelmingly emotional, but you know, that's kind of Lynch in a lot of ways, but like it's a film that sneaks up on you, and those last moments are just absurd. And also the little moments of like magical realism you get throughout the film, especially at the end. I love that little touch as well.
Somehow this is still a David Lynch movie through and through.
Yep, it is. I love it. My number 4.
I mentioned it earlier when you were talking about The Wind Will Carry Us, that there was another movie in my top 10 that has some similar parallels to that movie as it relates to beauty in the mundane and routines, especially given the landscape and how that plays into that. Well, The Straight Story was that movie I was alluding to, but I do think there are some similar things you can draw between those two movies as well. Like I said, this is my number 2. It could be my number 1 in any other year. I think it's one of the best, if not the best, movies of multiple kinds. I think it's probably the best ever live action Disney movie, for one thing. it's also one of the best movies about middle America that I think I've ever seen. One of the best movies about empathy and reconciliation. The thing that always stuck out for me and why I find it so moving is the way it depicts the kindness of strangers, which is something we've seen many times, especially movies that depict characters going on some type of long journey and the multiple people that they meet along the way. Like, this is not too dissimilar from even something like Into the Wild, for instance, just in a very different way.
Yeah.
But the way that Alvin Straight interacts with these strangers, and how they seem like they genuinely want to help him out and not in a way that feels like it's a convenience to the plot. I think that's one of the most magical touches about the simplicity of this movie. And I think it is profoundly moving for all the reasons that you said. Like I said, my number 2 of the year, and any other year, this could be top 1.
Yeah, it's great. I deeply love it. I wouldn't blame anyone that had it at number 1, even for 99.
Yeah.
I wouldn't blame anyone. Yeah, it's absolutely terrific. All right, number 3. What do you got at number 3?
Number 3, I've got Magnolia.
Oh, look, there's Magnolia. All right.
It's like you were waiting for that one.
It's like we've talked about this movie already.
I know. And it's even funnier because for those listening who did listen to both our Magnolia review and who are listening right now to this, first off, if you're watching on YouTube, you might notice that we're wearing the same clothes, which means we literally just got done recording our Magnolia review only hours before recording this one. We did it all in the same day. So needless to say, JD and I are kind of Magnolia'd out, which means we don't really have much else we can add to Magnolia that review already articulates. And I feel like I can just leave it at that. That review that we just had, which went on for about an hour and 20 minutes, lengthily articulates why we love this movie. And that's why it's my number 3. And honestly, it's a movie that when we started this exercise, I wasn't sure if it was going to end up as high as my top 3. But as I thought about it further, and like we talked about during that review, and just some of the filmmaking choices from Paul Thomas Anderson, how everything just feels so uniform and in unison and so smooth in execution, might be the best directorial effort of 1999, maybe. I don't know. Like, I feel like it could be.
Yeah. Magnolia is one of those movies where I kind of struggle in terms of the placement of it, because there's a lot in me that wants to say that this is maybe the best film of 99. Like, I could have this at number 1. I currently have this at number 2.
Okay.
But I kind of wonder, I thought a lot about, I think it was 2006 when we did that retrospective, because when we did our retrospective originally for 2006, I had Children of Men at number 2. And then I think about that film more, perhaps rewatch it another time. And then by the time we get to our Best of the Decade show, which we did last year, and we're reshuffling some of these lists, I thought I was maybe a little bit crazy, because not only is Children of Men my number 1 for that year, I think I had it in my top 10 for Best of the Decade for the 2000s.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of maybe feeling a little bit of that here with Magnolia, in the sense that, or at least I thought about it again when I'm trying to figure out my placement here, because a part of me wonders if in another, I guess, decade, because we're at the beginning of this, but like as time goes on, is it going to be like Children of Men, where, okay, I put Magnolia at number 2. Does that eventually become number 1? Maybe it slides down 1. I don't know. But like, I thought about that a lot with this top 3.
I did wonder about that too, especially given that I am putting Magnolia just below The Straight Story for me. Right now, I could safely say The Straight Story is a movie I prefer because it's more of a me movie, but it might just be more of a me movie right now. Magnolia, I almost feel like I could argue that Magnolia is the best movie of 1999, if that makes any sense. And
and we didn't really talk about criteria on this episode, but we have talked about this before. In fact, I want to say we talked about this actually quite a lot when we did our Best of the Decade and our Best of the 21st Century conversation, when we had that as well. When we're mix and matching, like, what's the best of the 2000s? What's the best of the 2010s? and we're talking about criteria. Like in that conversation, I talked about how over these last few years, I've kind of had the opposite transition of you, where I consider my subjective favorites, but I also put a lot of emphasis on other things other than just my own personal feelings toward a movie. Which is why something like A Children of Men ultimately ends up at number one now for 2006. And there's been a lot of reshuffling because of this kind of evolution that I've experienced. So there are times, and look, in full transparency, we'll get to it here in a second, but I am succumbing to my personal feelings for 1999 for this year. But that's why I struggle with this, because when I think about how I rate movies now and I try to consider everything besides just my personal feelings of a movie, I don't know, like a part of me wonders if Magnolia really is the best film, and there could be a flip-flopping of sorts that takes place over the next few years. But you know what? I'm preparing myself for Hamnet. Well, I'm just going to be in my feels for right now.
Well, that's well, I mean, that's another conversation for another time, I'm sure. But there is something to be said about making these lists as they are in the moment. So right now, these lists for us, they're right. They're correct for us right now. So when we go back and revisit them and realize that things maybe should have been reshuffled or things should have changed, that's kind of the charm of this exercise, right? Is when we acknowledge when those shifts happen, because that's kind of what makes this fun. Nothing is ever locked in stone. And I kind of like that about that. So the fact that maybe in a few years when we do, the best of the 90s, you might come around on Magnolia and say, actually, this might be the best movie of the entire decade of the 90s. And then you'll be like, I had this at number 2 instead of number 1 that year. That was interesting. So it reflects your headspace now, which I think is the whole point of criticism.
And that's why I bring up 2006 explicitly, because Pan's Labyrinth was my number 1 when we reviewed that film initially.
Right.
And there probably is a subjective, like, just on a purely subjective level, that's probably still my number 1 from that year. I love Del Toro's film, but I can't deny the prowess of Children of Men. I do think that is the best film of that year and one of the best films of the 2000s. And again, in this new criteria and how I rank things, I do put an emphasis on that, which is why I ultimately made that shuffle. And I think that's a great mirroring of what probably will happen here with 99. But yeah, to your point, I'm going to just sit in my feelings for this exercise.
That's that's how we do these lists on a short-term basis. We tend to do them more based on feeling. And then when we have some time to sit with them and marinate with them, that's when we get a little bit more analytical, and it allows those shifts to happen. So be interesting to see how that happens for you. So you have Magnolia at number 2. I have
Magnolia at number 2, and number 3 for me. And sorry, I know this is another hot take, so just bear with me, but I think The Matrix is quite good.
Okay.
So number 3 for me.
It's just the way you said that. It's quite good. That's such a hot take, man.
I feel like a hot take. I know. Look, Matrix, really good movie. And look, we're living in a time where AI it hasn't been more prevalent, and it just makes this film all the more dire, more challenging, more effective.
I agree. I feel like I'm the one giving the hot take by saying I have it at number 15.
That's a little surprising, just given our conversation on that trilogy. Before.
I like it quite a bit. That's why it's still in my top 20. There's one thing about that first Matrix I don't love, but it is something that the series did fix in other movies. And you might push back on this, but I don't really buy the romance between Neo and Trinity in that first movie. When you get that moment at the end where she says the Oracle revealed that I would fall in love and that person was the one, I just don't buy it in that moment. At least not until a movie like Matrix Reloaded came around and really solidified the romanticism of this franchise. And it's ultimately why Reloaded is actually my favorite Matrix film, because I love it as a romance film outside of just being a wonky experimental sci-fi adventure movie that really expands on the ideas of this first movie. But all the stuff involving Morpheus and Neo, as expository as it could be, it's good exposition because it's really intriguing writing, and that's how you do plot exposition in a way that actually feels kind of philosophical and forward thinking, like it actually has a point to it. It really is clever writing, and that is one of the best things about it.
Yeah, I will definitely push back against that.
Okay.
I watched this back in July, and I was astounded at how poignant I feel like The Matrix is. And maybe some of it is the legacy of this movie. It's the Wachowski sisters and their own sentimentality. I feel like they channeled their own David Lynch in some ways because they're equally sentimentalist in their own right. And I do love how that tethers with the film's themes. It's, it's ideas on love and why we fight for each other. I was more moved by that on this last rewatch than maybe ever before. I don't. Some of it could just be the state of modern blockbusters, and this just oozing with so much cool that is.
It is
so
a very
rare
cool
to find
movie
these days.
Yeah, but this is another one of those movies that might go back to my opening thoughts of not having like that close of a relationship to these movies in real time. Because The Matrix is a movie I saw a little bit later before I really had formatted my love of movies. So I don't have that personal connection to something like it as much as some of these other ones we've talked about. But even so, maybe that has something to do with it because it was all over the cultural zeitgeist at the time. And I just was too young to experience what that was like. Like for me, it was more The Phantom Menace. So like that was the thing. But I still love this movie quite a bit, even though I do prefer The Matrix Reloaded. I think that's a more intriguing movie, just given some of the wonky directions that it goes in.
I'm with you in the sense I didn't catch up with these movies until way later, as I noted earlier when we were kind of prepping up all of this. I mean, a lot of these 99 movies I didn't catch up with later. There's nothing subjective about this list, or personal, or nostalgic.
Right.
Maybe those are better words here. I have no nostalgic ties to 1999 at all. At least not with these movies. Mystery Alaska is maybe the only one. That's
a
only
good one. Still probably the best movie Jay Roach has ever directed.
I deeply love Mystery Alaska. That's about the only nostalgic film that I have from 1999. The Matrix I didn't catch up with till way later. And I do really love the sequels. I would champion the sequels. I think they're much better than their reputation. But I do think that first Matrix is as good as its reputation. And
it's a very good movie. Yeah.
And on this most recent watch, I was like, it's the most poignant that film has ever been for me. I think it is absolutely mesmerizing. I think it's a perfect movie. I gave it a full 5 stars. That was the first time I've gone the full 5 stars. I think it is absolutely incredible. And we haven't even talked about its influence, how deeply influential this film has become.
we could spend hours talking about that.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, and that whole element of it, like the revolution of this film, I think gives it weight. That's another reason I have it here as high as I do at number 3. So I think the Neo of it all, the romance of it all, the AI of it all, the revolution of it all in terms of its craft, the sentimental elements of it all. Like,
it is a very sentimental movie. I love the sincerity of it.
I deeply love it.
And honestly, the fact that it was able to feel like its own thing, despite some of its plot points feeling very similar to something like, I don't know, The Terminator, for instance. Like it's not the most inspired plot from a bare bones standpoint, but it still stands apart and feels like its own unique thing. That's pretty impressive.
Yep. Good stuff. All right, so that was my number 3. I noted earlier 2 for me was Magnolia, and 2 for you was The Straight Story.
So I think we have our number 1s here. And before I get to my number 1, I'm looking at my list, and I'm keeping track of your list. I'm kind of wondering, this might be the first time that this has ever happened. Did I make a miscalculation here?
I don't know. Did you?
Because I think we may have slightly different criteria given where I think you're going with your number 1.
Interesting.
I think there might be a film that I know we talked about this movie and whether or not it qualifies as 1999. And I think at the time we may have had different perspectives. But now I'm trying to think, did we ever confirm or land on where we want to put this movie?
All right. As we transition to our number 1 movies of 1999 here, we have to take a little bit of a pause because Brendan and I, we have realized in real time that there was a massive, and I cannot overstate this, we had a massive miscommunication about 1999.
We broke the system. We broke the system.
Absolutely broke the system. So I guess to give it away here up at the top, there is a film that Brennan and I, we talked about this back in February as far as what foreign films are we going to include for 1999, because as it happens every year, you get festival films or they get releases in their own country, but then they are different in the United States.
Yeah.
And so we have always defined our criteria as limited releases in the US. That's typically how we have done this. But the film in question is a movie that came out in its own country in 1997. And most sources label it as a 1997 movie. Letterboxd, IMDb, the list goes on and on. When you see this title, you will see the number 1997 next to it. However, it got a release in the United States in 1999. So much so that the great Roger Ebert even considered it for his 1999 list, as many critics at the time did, again, here in the United States. So, at the beginning of the year, I brought this to Brendan's attention. Are we going to consider this a 1997 movie or a 1999 movie?
And guess what I said? I said it would be a 97 movie.
And I said I'm conflicted because we've always gone by the criteria of limited U.S. release. So for consistency purposes, maybe we keep it to 99. But I understand, 97 is how most sources label it.
Yeah.
So maybe it is considered a 97 movie. In fact, I mentioned this last week on the show to Julia because she had questions about our criteria as it relates to her own 1999 list. Because if you listened to last week's show, she had Ghost Dog, for example, on her list.
Mm-hmm.
And we considered that a 2000 movie.
Yeah.
Because it came out, its limited release in the U.S. was the year 2000, not 1999, even though most sources might indicate it a 1999 movie. So I brought it up last week.
And I thought the way you brought that up last week was us saying it will be a 1999 movie for us.
Yes. I meant the opposite. I meant, okay, we're going to consider this a 1997 movie, not 1999. I had the total opposite mentality. But here's the thing is that text chain that I referenced earlier, it just kind of ended. Brendan's like, I think we should do 97. I said 99, and then it just stopped. We moved on.
And then I replied with, do you have the screener for Jane Austen Wreck My Life?
Yeah, so it just ended. And like in my mind, the conversation was over. We were going to consider it 97.
I thought the opposite.
And Brennan thought the opposite.
So lo and behold, we did this whole exercise with me already pre-planned to have Princess Mononoke from Hayao Miyazaki as my favorite movie of 1999.
Yeah. And it was in my top 10 for 1997. Even though that's 2 years from now, I already know that was on my list for 1997. So we have decided, we took a moment to gather ourselves once we realized this error.
It was kind of hilarious.
It was hilarious. And look, Roger Ebert considered it 99. The great Josh Larson, many other critics have this on their 1999 list. And look, it came out in the States in 1999. Came out in Japan in 97.
If we were critics at the time, we would consider it a 1999 film.
A 99 movie, absolutely. So with that said, Brendan already had this on his list. This does change things for my list because obviously I didn't have it on my list. I thought we were doing this in another 2 years. So it changes my list. In fact, it changes it quite drastically, and it changes some of my comments earlier as it relates to animated film. I noted earlier, I think this was a great year for animation. It is an even better year for animation now that we are considering Princess Mononoke.
Because you had said that there was a clear animated movie you would take over South Park. And at the time you were talking about that animated movie was not even Princess Mononoke.
It was not Princess Mononoke.
I'm guessing that animated movie in question was The Iron Giant.
The Iron Giant, which is on my list. I'll get to that here in a little bit. But that previously was my vote for best animated film. But since we are considering Mononoke, that changes things here. So let's do this. Because I do have another movie on my list I haven't even talked about yet.
I know. And that's where I know you were going with. That's what sparked the whole thing where it's like, wait a minute, I think we made a miscalculation here. We need a pause.
And since we had a pause, I have decided I'm just to reshift my top 10 a little bit, even previously to how we've discussed the numbering already.
I think...
I'm just taking advantage of the opportunity here.
Okay, well, good for you. I think this is a clear moment for us to finally address the elephant in the room as far as our criteria when it comes to these releases and these retrospectives. We knew at some point the way foreign language films were structured and when they were released in their home turfs and when they came over in the States, the further back that we go with these retrospectives on an annual basis, at some point, it's going to become borderline impossible to use our criteria anymore to denote the difference between when a movie gets its own release in its own country, foreign films specifically, and when it gets released here in the United States. There's going to be a point where we have to probably put a stop to that criteria. I think that time is now when it completely sabotages a show mid-recording.
Yeah, or at the very least, we have to talk about this very explicitly at the beginning of the year, which films we're going to consider, which foreign films.
I mean, back in July, you even openly asked me, what foreign language films are we going to consider? And I did not bring up Princess Mononoke because back in May, a few months prior, I thought we had established that you wanted it as a 1999 movie. Yeah. You thought I had established it as a 1907 movie. So, what are we even doing here?
I know. Yeah, exactly. And that was a big reason I asked that to begin with, was the whole mix-up of Mononoke. Yeah.
And I didn't even think of that. I thought it was just, okay, Mononoke is sealed. I thought that was sealed at that time.
Yeah. So even though I had sought out clarity, it turns out we didn't get much clarity. At least when it came to Mononoke, we were still very much confused. So we are going to consider this a 1999 movie. So I'm going to reshuffle my list here.
I'm curious to see what your final list looks like now. I did not mean for this to be as sabotaged as it was. I went in with the wrong headspace apparently, but maybe this is the last time we really employ this criteria during one of these retrospectives, or at the very least, we really got to define this better. We got to get better.
I think we just have to define it together at the beginning of the year so we don't run into this problem again. But that's fine. We'll work with it for this year. And it takes a year that I have come to fall in love with, and I love it even more now. So,
well, I mean, it's a movie we've talked about a lot. We don't really have to spend much time on it. I feel like it was more interesting talking about the release of the movie and how and why we're making it qualify now. We did a whole episode on Princess Mononoke back on episode 502. It was almost 3 years ago. It was during our Studio Ghibli series. So we had a great
conversation though.
Yeah, it was
fun.
It's top 5 movie for me, honestly. I think that's what ultimately made 1999 a rewarding experience since we're considering it a 1999 movie now. But it's like, it's one of those movies that regardless of where we considered it, 1999, 1997, it's kind of number one by technicality, regardless. If we did it for 97, it would be number one for 97 for me. I'll just say that as well.
Okay, so here is my list. Your 10 is exactly what we talked about with Mononoke at your number 1. I don't know if we didn't really reveal that before the edit. With Mononoke, obviously your number 1 on this list. So here's where I'm at. I'm going to shuffle The Wind Will Carry Us to 11. I'm going to keep Being John Malkovich at number 10.
Interesting. I did not expect that to be the shuffle.
Well, you know what? Fine. I'll just reshuffle it. We're shuffling. So I'll just move John Malkovich down.
JD's new theme song is JD's new theme song is officially Every Day a Shuffling.
Exactly. Look, I have the opportunity here. Why not? Okay, that's fine.
You were going on a few moments ago about how The Wind Will Carry Us is probably a top 5 movie of the year for you.
I really do. It's just like I have a hard time moving Spike Jonze out of my top 10, but that's fine because you are right. I still think that about The Wind Will Carry Us. All right, that's fine. I'll keep that at 10. You're right. The Sixth Sense is now my number 9. The Insider I did have at number 6 previously, right?
Right.
That's where I had it before. I'm going to flip-flop Eyes Wide Shut and The Insider.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So that's the other big, shuffling that I'm going to do on the fly here.
For those of you listening who want to know why and how these lists are never set in stone for us, this is why.
This is why. So Wind Will Carry Us at 10, Sixth Sense at 9. At number 8 is The Limey.
Okay.
Right? And then at number 7 is Eyes Wide Shut. Number 6 is The Insider. And then at number 5 now is The Straight Story. At number 4 is The Matrix. At number 3 is a movie I'll get to here in a second. Number 2 is Magnolia. And number 1, Princess Mononoke.
So it's a shift to number 1. Holy cow.
Yep. Again, that's why I desperately wanted to clarify this in February because it was always going to be high on my list. And it's just so funny that we did get that clarity. All right. No, I'm definitely with you there.
All right. So I guess talk about end the whole show by talking about your number 3 movie of the year.
Yeah, exactly. So my number 3, which as of 5 minutes ago was actually number 1. Oh, this is hilarious.
This speaks to the lack of confidence when doing any of these retrospectives.
But again, I'm reshuffling this honestly based off the conversation we had some moments ago about Magnolia being one of the best films of the year.
Sure.
Joeline Tourmai. And look, who knows? It still may the film I'm about to talk about in another year or two, maybe it will become my number 1 and I'll just go with it.
Yeah, and I know this is the movie that you were originally going to have at your number 1, given how much you love it.
Yeah.
I guess in a way, maybe this still kind of is your favorite movie of the year in a way.
Yeah, for sure. And I've had, these movies before, these kind of subjective favorites that kind of land in my top 5 somewhere, even if it's not number 1.
Yeah.
So my number 3, Hirokazu Koreeda's Afterlife, which I think is one of his very, very best movies. This is a precursor to something like Kogonada's After Yang, which I think is brilliant in its own right. And another great example of what we talked about with Magnolia, that sometimes the trainee is as good as the trainer. I think After Yang is another great example of that. That film is deeply inspired by Afterlife. Afterlife is this gorgeous, poetic meditation on memory and mortality. Essentially, what happens is people die, they go to this purgatory setting where they talk to these agents, and they have to come up with a memory of their life that they live, that they want to live with forever. And once they choose the memory, these agents cinematically recreate it for them and reinterpret it, and that's the memory they live with for eternity. So it is a profound experience. You only get to choose one memory. So some people, they have to take time to think about it. Some people know immediately. And what's brilliant about Koreeda's approach here is a lot of the interviews that we see here, very documentary style. These were not actors. These were real people that he interviewed, simply asking that question: what memory would you choose? And it makes for this incredible docu-style drama that is incredibly soulful, brilliant. It's everything that I love about Koreeda. It's very meditative, of course, and I just love these performances. And one of the few professional actors that we do see in this film gave one of my favorite performances of 1999. Deeply incredible. So I love Koreeda's Afterlife. Again, I'm going to end up having it at number 3 here, but I love it just as much as Magnolia and Mononoke. I think it's absolutely a masterpiece. And Koreeda's one of my favorite filmmakers. You asked me this some weeks ago, is this my new favorite Koreeda movie? And it might be, honestly. And I know this is one of his early films. And and as much as I love Shoplifters, I love all of his movies. And this is as breathtaking as I've seen. Like every time I watch a Koreeda movie, he just absolutely flabbergasts me. And Afterlife is one of those brilliant, quiet, subtle masterpieces of 99. It doesn't get talked about enough in the context of foreign films of that year.
Sure.
But that's the career of Koreeda. Nobody really talks about him as much as, you and I and a few other cinephiles, I guess, that champion him. But I think he's one of the great humanistic filmmakers we have working today. And I love Afterlife. So that's high on my list here.
I have this at number 19 right now, but it's sort of a similar thing with The Wind Will Carry Us. It's one of those movies I caught up with maybe a little bit too late for this exercise for this 1999 retrospective, and I just need a little bit more time to sit with it. At this point now, I do slightly prefer Koreeda's more recent films. I think they're just more my vibe. And I guess that they have a little bit more of a centralized nucleus for me than this one does. Actually, the interesting thing about Afterlife that I found really powerful is that it actually reminded me a lot of Andrei Tarkovsky, given the way that some of these characters kind of philosophize about what memories ultimately mean. And then it also becomes kind of about the movie making process in a way.
It does.
Yeah, like in a way, it's actually a movie about movies. And it's kind of cryptically about that in many ways. Which I do think is pretty interesting.
Absolutely a film about art and cinema as a tool to help cope with your memory. And like those two things are so intrinsically connected. In the
Absolutely.
Film. It's breathtaking.
Yeah. I think it's a movie I'll like more as I let time be kind to it for me. I think I just need that time for it.
Yeah. I mean, I love his most recent work as well. I still think Shoplifters is his best of the contemporary stuff, but I think Afterlife is right there with Shoplifters.
Shoplifters is probably the biggest maybe the best summation of everything that he has done up until that point in his career. Like, in a way, Shoplifters is kind of like the Create a Buffet in many ways. And I can understand why people cite it as it is my personal favorite as well. So I guess that's a weird thing to say. But I do like a lot of his more recent films at this point, but I kind of see Afterlife being one that I grow more fond of as I let it marinate for me.
Yeah, I deeply love it. There's such a tragic beauty to the film that is absolutely extraordinary. I hope this is what the afterlife is what this film depicts. That's what I'm hoping for.
That'd be about movie making,
like
making home movies.
Yeah, easily one of my favorite creative films, and one of the very best of '99. So
Good
that
stuff.
is my new top 10.
I think that's the first time we've ever ended one of these episodes with a number 3 pick.
Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So 11 through 20. What do you have as your 11 through 20?
Number 11, The Limey. Number 12, Toy Story 2. Number 13, Being John Malkovich. Number 14, David Cronenberg's Existence. I still don't know how to pronounce it. Existence is how they say it in that movie. Number 15, The Matrix. Number 16, a personal favorite of mine, very subjective pick. I'm going to go with October Sky. Number 17, the comedy Dick. Number 18, the documentary American Movie. Number 19, Afterlife, as I just said. And number 20, the other foreign language film we sort of alluded to before, Rosetta, which won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival.
All right. So number 11 for me now is Being John Malkovich. That stings. At number 12 for me is Almodovar's All About My Mother. At 13 is Bringing Out the Dead, another one that stings. All three of those now sting quite a bit.
Sure.
At number 14 is The Iron Giant. At 15 is Fight Club. At 16 is the documentary American Movie. At number 17 is Topsy Turvy. And number 18 is the German film Amy and Jaguar, one of those recent films that I last caught up with. Is awesome. Movie.
I did not see that one, sadly.
At 19 is South Park. And then at number 20 for me is Not One Less.
Okay.
I did have Existence there in that 20.
Okay, so now number 21.
And now 21. Princess Mononoke Existence it out of the list. But some good movies, some great movies from 1999.
Yeah.
And, you know, we didn't really talk about Blair Witch. Want to at least throw that out there. Toy Story 2, we didn't really talk about. Wanted to throw that out there. And of course, Mystery Alaska, my favorite sports movie. Gonna throw that out there as well. All great honorable mentions.
I'm going to throw a few others here that would round out somewhere in my top 30, my 21 through 30 specifically, but I also love Man on the Moon with Jim Carrey. Sleepy Hollow, the Tim Burton movie. Actually,
yeah, that would be in my 21 through 30 as well.
Yeah. I'm also a big fan of That First American Pie, more so than you are. There's the comedy Bowfinger with Steve Martin and Eddie Murphy, also really good stuff. Galaxy Quest was also a childhood favorite of mine that I think is actually more timely now given nerd culture. So a few there that I also wanted to highlight that I think are also very good.
Yeah, I won't go into them too much, but I mentioned Run Lola Run earlier. Rosetta, Talented Mr. Ripley, Dick would all somewhere be in that 21 through 30 as well. I deeply love all those movies. Man on the Moon, another great one that I really, really love. So, 1999, good stuff. I especially now that we're including Mononoke.
Well, made it
that
a confusing year for us during retrospectives.
A year that I have really come to cherish now.
Looks like our respective top 10s. We had 5 crossover, so it's pretty
there you go.
Pretty standard for us.
That's what we guessed. Yeah, about 4 or 5. So, okay, since we're running long, because of everything that just happened, we're just going to end this show here.
Yeah.
Thanks to everyone that participated, that listened to this show. Be sure to go and check out our review of Magnolia. That's available right now as well. There's going to be another review of Conjuring: The Last Rites coming later this week, a new one in session. You can be on the lookout for that. Lots of festival coverage on the website, InSessionFilm.com. Dave and the team killing it. Be sure to go and check all of that out as well. So thanks, everyone, for your support. Thanks for bearing with us. I know we went long here. 1999, turns out, good year for movies. Everyone was right. Good job, everybody.
Where no one can agree on anything.
With all of that said, thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the InSession Film Podcast.